All right, ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome back once again to the longest running show in the world about data. It's called DM Radio. Yours truly, Eric
Woohoo!
Kavanaugh here. Yeah, baby. And Christmas is just a couple days away, but Christmas came early for us because we crested 100,000 subscribers on YouTube. So that's pretty exciting. We've been talking a lot about AI these days, obviously, and who isn't talking about AI? And today we've got the legendary Jim Harris on the line, keynoter, instructor, consultant, writer, author, best-selling author, writes books, like whole books, like start to finish. It's very exciting stuff. Jim Harris, welcome back to DM Radio.
Great to be on air with you, Eric.
Yeah, man. So we're gearing up for CES, and I thought I would give our audience a bit of a primer on what's really going on out there. And of course, AI is very hot. I had a show yesterday with the CEO of Sugar CRM and my good buddy Ray Wang. And Ray was joking that the CEOs he talks to these days are all saying, "Yeah, we've budgeted for the AI, so we want to buy the AI." And he's like, "Okay, what do you mean by that?" Like, there's a lot of different kinds of AI out there. There are lots of different kinds of models. Of course, large language models are stealing all the headlines these days, but that's not the only kind of AI, and it's not even the most valuable kind of AI. And what we're really seeing these days is excitement because the Gen AI models can act like they speak English. They can speak German. They can speak French. You could do real-time translation. Honestly, I think that's probably one of the coolest aspects of these large language models is the real-time translation. You can now go to a foreign country and get yourself an app and translate in real time what they're saying in German and French and Italian and Mandarin, whatever. I mean, how big a deal is that?
It is. It's absolutely amazing. When I grew up, we had Star Trek, and they had a universal real-time translator on Star Trek, and
Right.
I knew someday that would come to be, and it's this day.
Here it is. It has arrived. And it's like, that's, I mean, in and of itself, that's spectacular. It's just an amazing, amazing innovation because now these barriers are gone. And, that's
So
actually
I'll
what, go ahead.
I'll
Yeah.
give you an example on this, Eric. So I speak at a lot of conferences, about 50 a year. And sometimes I'd be at a big international congress that would have six translation booths at the back with
Mm,
two translators per booth. And
wow.
every delegate would get some little headset, and receiver, and they could tune into whichever channel they wanted. And for a 4 day congress with 500 people, it'd be $100,000 because you have to fly the 12
Wow.
translators there
Right.
and put them up. And, you got to
Right.
feed the translators too. Geez,
That's
they're
funny.
demanding.
Right.
Anyways, today there's an app called Wordly that everybody tunes in to a website on their smartphone, uses their own earbuds, and they can hear uh, any of 120 languages. So the speaker is speaking English, let's say, and you can tune into any language. But there's more. I'm sitting next to a French deaf woman, and it also transcribes, like, has the
Wow.
transcript in French. So she's reading in French with an English speaking speaker at the front. And
Wow.
instead of $100,000, which it was, used to be, it's like $1,500 for a conference.
Wow.
So accessible, way more affordable, real time, and in 120 languages
That's
for
crazy.
98.5% less.
Right. I mean, and this is a very, very significant market changing dynamic because now, well, first of all, for translators, they're like, oh man, I guess I got to find a new line of work because it's not going to be the same. It's going to be so much
But
easier.
here's the thing, if you're doing $1 billion merger or you're negotiating a peace contract or
Right.
a peace accord at the UN, you're going to use human translators, right?
Interesting. Yeah, there's still a market for it for the high end stuff, but you have to, really be dialed in and prepared to work on a different level. And I think this is the hallmark of the AI era is that it will change your day-to-day workflow and you have to adapt. Now, a lot of people keep saying, "Oh, it's going to take jobs away." I just heard yesterday on the news, they're like, "Oh, AI took 55,000 jobs away." I'm like, did it? Did AI take 55,000 jobs? Or did companies lay people off and say AI was the reason. Sometimes that happens. They're also trying to retool and figure out what they're doing. I mean, I do think there's going to be a tremendous amount of work necessary to upskill your team and to reorient your workflows because this does solve huge challenges. There was a guy I talked to in New Orleans at the Confluent conference. Of course, that's the company that just got bought by IBM for a tasty $11 billion, apparently, which was, no chump change there, but Big Blue can afford it. But he was telling me that they have a client of theirs who used Gen AI to put together all the research necessary to make a decision on where to build, like a next shopping mall, for example. So you're talking tons of demographic information, tons of information on permits, on who to talk to, on contractors, getting rates for various services. I mean, it's a huge job that would normally take, I think he told me, like 6 to 8 weeks. And now it's done in like 2 days because they have Gen AI going out, like Manus and ChatGPT and others, going out, gathering information, collating it, delivering it in a form that is usable. That saved them like 80% of the time necessary or more. That is a huge transformation. That's how you make money using this Gen AI stuff, right?
So this is a great example, Eric, and it's very important because the least discussed aspect of Gen AI is the huge amount of time savings. So,
Hmm.
have you seen that Billy Bob Thornton show, Landman?
Yes.
It's
Uh-huh.
on
Yeah.
Prime. Totally. Listeners, if you haven't seen it, don't watch it. It's addictive. You'll have to binge the whole thing.
That's funny.
So, I was working with some CEOs, and one of them is in land management. And she had to assemble a 300 parcel piece of land for a client. And the way she would have historically started this project is with a 300 row 80-hour Excel spreadsheet, like row
Oh,
one, name of first
right.
client,
Right.
survey of their property, year they
Right.
bought it, what they paid for it, are there
Right.
easements on their property, on and on. Massive spreadsheet. Well, with a very good prompt, she pointed it at two government websites, and that work was done in 5 seconds. So 80
Wow.
hours to 5 seconds. And what is that as a productivity improvement? It's near infinite. And
Yeah.
so she gets to repurpose her time. She gets to now spend time selling or prospecting or, spending time with her most important client, going deeper on their needs assessment. So the time saving is the least discussed aspect of AI.
Hmm. Yeah, and it's a huge deal. So now, like you said, you have to do other things. That task, which let's be honest, was really boring. I mean, that's the nice thing about AI is it tackles really tedious, boring stuff that human beings would really not want to do. Not that you can't do it, not that you can't learn something by doing it. Sure, you can, but come on. If it's just information gathering and collating, boom, let the AI do that, and then you get on to the interesting thing of reviewing all the data, right?
So, an accounting firm will take the books, all the financials of a corporation, and they will test 2.5% of all the transactions, of the
Hmm.
tens of thousands of transactions, just to get some random sample to see, okay, are we seeing anything askew here?
Right.
And in the same way, humans are going to come back to for instance, this CEO, the 80 hours of work, and say, okay, well, let me sample, you know, 10 of the 300 transactions or analysis and see that everything is correct.
Hmm. Now they just do it all. Now you don't have to sample it anymore. I mean, that's the thing. And this is what I've heard too, is now you can do the whole thing. I mean, think about your taxes. I remember because I'm a data analyst, so I've been in this space for a pretty long time, and I'm very familiar with things like automation, for example, and rules-based systems. Well, gosh, probably like 7, 8, 9 years ago, I thought to myself, why can't I go into QuickBooks and just do export as Schedule C? because Schedule C in the United States, that's where you put all of your expenses for your business, like your inventory or your rent payments or whatever, advertising, whatever it is. There are like 32 or so different fields you can fill out. And inside of QuickBooks, it's already marked accordingly, according to the bookkeeping. And these days, it can be done automatically. So that's one of the other nice things that's happening with AI is it can see what a restaurant is, and if that restaurant is not in your hometown, well, that's a travel expense. It sees a hotel, that's a travel expense. If it sees some product, for example, from a supplier, well, that's inventory. And I thought, why can't I just do export as Schedule C and be done with my taxes? And the short answer is in the fairly near future, you're kind of going to be able to do that because you can build a model, an AI model that recognizes all these different kinds of transactions and categorizes them accordingly. Now, you would not use ChatGPT for that because it's a what they call a probabilistic model. So it's not deterministic. It's not doing the same thing every time according to a set of rules, but that's what tax accountants do. So here again, guess what, folks? The job of accounting is going to get expedited and you'll just be doing basic things like really digging deeper to understand, okay, is this correct? Is this not correct? You're going to be fact checking more than you are climbing the mountain. And that's kind of how I view this is like, so I'll give you an analogy. I just used it again the other day, and the guy from Sugar CRM loved it. He was like, "Wow, that's a pretty good analogy." I said, for 50 years or so in the information technology world, in the data world, systems, operating systems, applications, we've been pushing this big boulder up this hill and it got all the way to the top of the hill and now it's going down the other side and we're trying to stop it or guide it. And that's the AI. Like that's the inflection point. So now we're going to be monitoring the thing and trying to shape and govern it basically so it doesn't roll us over. But what do you think about that analogy?
Well, it's a classic. There's the in Greek mythology there was a guy called Sisyphus who
Mm-hmm.
has to roll a rock up
Mm-hmm.
the hill eternally. The gods punished him.
Right.
So and no sooner does he get the rock to the hill than it rolls down. He has to pull it back up again. Anyways, you're very classic, Eric.
Yeah.
So
Well,
yeah, these tools are going to help us in ways that most people at this point don't realize. We're very early in the revolution, and people think of ChatGPT as the poster boy for AI, and it is in many ways. It's what gained the market, the mind share, and created this whole revolution. But I was looking at some numbers the other day, and it took 13 years for the web to reach 800 million users. 13 years. And it
wow.
took ChatGPT less than 3 years. So uh, it is a revolution like the web revolution in 93, but it's happening at warp speed,
Mm-hmm.
4.3 times faster.
Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, that really is crazy. And I think that is going to be probably the high mark, if you will, of adoption. I don't see new AI systems catching fire like that, but I do think the newer AI systems will be more focused. People talk about small language models as opposed to large language models. I think that's going to have a lot of traction in the near future. Bespoke models, essentially, the companies will come up with that are trained on their enterprise data, and you do need a lot of data to do this. So that's one of the hiccups is that if you try to do it yourself, and if you're a Fortune 2000 company, okay, you can dedicate the budget to getting that done. But the bottom line is, it is expensive. It takes a lot of time and effort. But if there is value to your business, this is back to Ray Wang's comment, or we want to buy the AI. Well, which AI do you want to buy, and what are you going to do with it? And then, again, with the topic being CES and consumer electronics, where does that come into play? And I think it comes into play in lots and lots of different places. These models can be used for manufacturing, for example, for optimizing what object does what task in a manufacturing plant. I mean, that's what they call operational technology, OT, which is really important because if those things aren't humming along, you're not making any money. And so smart manufacturing strikes me as one of the most interesting spaces for deterministic AI systems, even as simple as this visual system. So there are large language models and there are large visual models as well. That's one thing. In fact, FPT, the company we know about from Vietnam, their chairman was talking all about that stuff. He said, you know what? You use every single hour of every single day when you're awake is your eyes and you view things. And so these visual models are very good in manufacturing because they can just be watching all the time and noticing if some widget goes by that is malformed, and then bing, it just says, nope, kick that one out. If all the others are okay, fine. I mean, that's the kind of quality assurance thing you were talking about in the accounting space. Because it used to be you would just sample 2% of the transactions and check those and then go, okay, let it go through. No, not anymore. Like you can sample every single one. It's not sampling, you're analyzing everything. So that's where the AI comes into play in the consumer space, at least in manufacturing, is being able to see defects and act on them immediately. That's a huge deal right there, right?
Yeah, if you think the cost of defects and what it is, because if you produce widgets and you ship them out and something goes wrong, you have to recall them all.
Right.
And
Right.
then the shipping costs of bringing them back and the reputational risk and repairing them and sending out new ones, like it's amazing. So the best way to save money is to prevent problems in the first place. So we're it changes the economics of entire industries.
Hmm.
The other thing to talk about, I was interviewing the chief product officer of OpenAI. His name's Kevin Weil
Wow.
in March, and he was saying on an equivalent intelligence basis, the cost of AI from ChatGPT has been declining by 10x a year. So we
Wow.
just celebrated 3 years of ChatGPT on November 30th. So the decline is 1000x
Wow.
for cost. Now, the contrarian view to that is that was for simple text-based queries.
Right.
Now we're creating images,
Right.
which are more intensive. Now we're creating videos with Sora, for instance.
Right.
So, but on an equivalent basis, the cost has gone down by 1000x
That's amazing.
since the end of 2022.
Yeah, let's put a pin in it. We'll be right back. You're listening to DM Radio. All right, folks, back here on DM Radio with the inimitable Jim Harris, who is talking about really the cost of inference, I think, is where he's going. And what's interesting about these models is that once they're built, if they're built correctly, they're relatively inexpensive in terms of the cost of inference, and that's where you get value from an AI model. You don't get any value from training the model. You get value from the inference, from using the model to give you answers on things. And so that's where it comes in very handy, like I mentioned, in areas like manufacturing, for example. And then the creative arts, you talk about being able to whip up websites, being able to whip up designs of things. Now, different models are good at different things. ChatGPT, for example, is horrible at layout. If it says, "Oh, I want me to lay out a nice PDF for you," say no, because it just sucks. It's really, really bad. But others are pretty good, and they're really good at image generation. That's why you see all these interesting sort of futuristic looking images everywhere on LinkedIn and Instagram and other places. So there again, what happened? Well, it used to cost a lot of money to have some guy sit around or some girl sit around and bang out your graphics. Now it doesn't. So the graphic artists are really left to fine tune things or to manage the project. It changes the work that gets done. But also, there is something to be said for original content. I mean, the thing with the large language models is they are consensus engines. So they're going to give you the average of what they've seen in their training based upon your prompt. So that's why stuff kind of sounds like it's from ChatGPT, and you can see like the layout in text. It likes to do lots of subheads, like every 3 paragraphs, it does a subhead. It likes to do bullet points. It likes to do all kind of stuff. Of course, you can tell it not to do that, but you do want to be careful about just using whatever it spits out, right? But it is very valuable in terms of, again, blocking and tackling, giving yourself ideas for an article. Say, I want to write an article on AI at the Consumer Electronics Show. Give me some ideas, and it'll search the web. It'll grab a bunch of links, scrape all that content, put it into a cache, and then run the summary algorithm on that. And then boom, there you go. It's very good at that kind of thing, right, Jim?
It is. And I've been having some fun with it just recently. So here in the run up to Christmas, I said I wanted it to create an image of me with the Grinch, the movie that Jim Carrey was in.
Yeah.
Now, for copyright reasons, it can't give me exactly but it's a green guy, and it's hilarious. And then with Sora, I wanted to create a video of me being a crooner like Frank Sinatra or Michael Bublé, and there I am crooning away in a big hotel with Christmas lights, and it's hilarious. I posted them on my Facebook. So you start by playing with it, but you can ultimately see how this will impact our marketing images that we use in marketing.
It's crazy. I mean, it really, it's amazing how much that has changed. And now again, you see these graphics everywhere. So to stand out, you still have to do things differently. But these are productivity tools. And that's what you get with the Gen AI stuff. It is generative by nature. So it's going to help you in that whole space. And who was telling me I was talking to? Oh, a good friend of ours from around here. And she was saying in her work environment, which is like a hospital system, she's saying, look, I know these people who are sending me these documents, they can't write this well. What's going on? Oh, it's ChatGPT. Like, that's what it is. They use ChatGPT just, and it's good as a baseline to get you something that looks professional and sounds professional. In the legal field, I mean, here's another area in the absolute crosshairs of AI and of Gen AI because it can spin up legal documents that look just like regular important legal documents. Now, you have to be careful that you're citing real sources and you're citing actual case law, which is why I think it was LexisNexis maybe kind of bottled that all up. So now you got to pay them to get at it, even though it's public records. But, it's these again are examples where Gen AI greases the tracks to the next step in the workflow, which is now proofreading, making sure it's correct, and then moving forward with your task. But it does all that information gathering and formatting for you extremely well.
I was giving a lecture at a university here last night with a friend and colleague of mine who creates custom AIs for clients. And one of the AIs he created for a company out west was around legal. And the owner, the patriarch of the family, who's in his 80s, has passed the business over to his kids, but he still reviews these legal contracts. And these documents will be dozens, if not 100 pages long. So Scott took some of the old contracts that they've been operating under and just ran them through the AI just as a test and found all sorts of mistakes
Hmm.
in the contracts they were operating under. They'd already agreed to. And
Wow.
and the owner of the business, the 80-year-old, said, I can't believe, like I spend weeks on these contracts and I missed some of this stuff. So we think, oh, I'm so worried about the AI. But if you build a custom AI and you're not relying on the world's data, you're relying on your set of, for instance, templates in contracts, right? You don't have to worry about hallucination or errors or so on. You can use it in a very specific way. The other thing is that there can be memory loss. So many people are hitting ChatGPT every hour that I think if you have built custom GPTs or custom agents, sometimes there can be memory loss. It's like, Einstein, but with Alzheimer's.
Right.
So
That's
little
funny.
bits of your predetermined instruction sets can get lost. So, in answer to this, what Scott does is he uploads fresh every time you're doing a query, the instruction sets,
Wow. See,
so
that's
that
smart.
you're
Yep.
not relying on historic instruction sets, which could be subject to, uh, you know, this attrition of memory.
Hmm. Well, and so here's a trick, right? So your friend has learned a trick to train the AI, and some of the most interesting and I think useful advice I've heard from experts in the field is that you want to be very careful how you use generative AI. And if you're very specific with it about what you want, it'll be very specific back. If you're fairly vague about it, it'll be fairly vague when you come back. So, how you direct it really has a lot to do with what it generates. But you still do need to check things. I mean, that's the problem is that it sounds very confident as it says things that are very much wrong. Like again, different ones are different. So on my iPhone, I was asking it this morning, tell me about transformer models and Jürgen Schmidhuber's work in that space, and it gave me movies by Mark Wahlberg. I'm like, no, I'm talking about transformer models. There's a gentleman, Jürgen Schmidhuber. He was on my show years ago. He wrote these papers in the 1990s. He wrote these papers. And just in the last few years, the computational power has arrived to manifest what he had in his mind way back when. So this is an interesting aspect of the AI that's out there today is that the ideas for it have been around for years in some cases, but we just didn't have the computational power, the will to do it, the labs focused on it. Now we have all that, and that's why you have this. I predicted at the beginning of this calendar year that we were entering an age of hyper accelerated innovation. And boy, has that been true. I mean, it's just, and what's interesting too, the guy from Sugar CRM was saying that, the narrow focus of a particular workflow or task or challenge and the narrow focus and the hard work around that is what generates really, really powerful results. And that's what's going to blow people away. Look at TikTok. The TikTok algorithm, I know how addictive it is because my kid loves that stuff and we try to, temper her use of it a bit. But it is very powerful and it's very compelling. And, it's still in negotiations, right? Is it going to be sold? Is it not going to be sold? Is it going to be banned in the US? Talk about rules. But that is just crazy how powerful it is. And that's what you can get if you focus on a particular task. And I think that's the key is focus, know what you want from this thing, and then work to get it done. What do you think?
I agree, absolutely. Many people, for instance, if I give a query to ChatGPT and say, "Tell me everything there is to know about queens," I get a terrible answer, and I blame the tool. But was I talking about Queen's University, where I graduate? Was I talking about the recently deceased Queen of England?
Right,
Was I talking about how a queen moves on a chessboard?
right,
Was I talking about Freddie Mercury, the frontman for the band Queen? Was I talking about a drag queen, or was I talking about how a beehive organizes around the queen bee?
right.
But it was my lack of specificity in the prompt that led to a terrible answer. And then I blame the tool. And I believe these tools are like a magic wand. In the hand of a master magician,
Hmm,
they can accomplish things you thought were impossible.
right,
But in the hands of the sorcerer's apprentice, you can get these horrific results.
right.
So, and it has nothing to do with the wand. It
Hmm.
has everything to do with the skill set of the one wielding the wand. And so we have to really invest in ourselves in upping our skill set around the use of AI. And when I was at the World Economic Forum in January 2025, the WEF jobs report came out and said that 39% of the average worker's skill set is no longer relevant by 2030.
Wow.
So we need an industrial scale learning and development focus over the next 4 years at a rate that we've never had before. And so training and development, education, learning, The HR departments of organizations become critical in ensuring that people in the organization are continually learning new skill sets.
Yeah. No,
So
I mean, that's an excellent point.
I was
Yeah.
just talking to somebody, and there's a global multinational company, and the leadership meeting, which is 4 days long and upcoming, if you're a CEO, you can't attend it unless you've taken certain AI courses.
Wow.
So, and let me tell you, like, if you can't go, that's like serious career limiting move.
Wow.
So we're going to see requirements embedded in organizations like that.
Wow. Yeah, I think that's an excellent point, and it speaks again to upskilling. And by the way, folks, throw a little advertisement out here for for myself and Jim Harris. If you're out there wondering, wow, I need someone to come in and help our team upskill, give us a call. Send me an email, info@dmradio.biz, and we will get you in touch with members of our team, and we can help you out. Because this upskilling is really, really, really important. I mean, again, the power of these systems and knowing how to use them in what context and when not to use them is very important. And, to get back to one of the general rules, most of the successful implementations of Gen AI in the workplace today have been inwardly focused. In other words, it's decision support as opposed to externally focused. And some of the bad stories that you've heard are when they went externally focused too soon with a chatbot, for example. Chatbot trained on your corporate data, for example. If you do that right, it can be very useful. If you do it wrong, you'll have a chatbot for your auto dealership recommending someone buy a car that you don't even sell. Like that's happened before. So you have to be careful about these things. And that's the challenge with these general purpose large language models. So what do people do then? There's really a couple different angles that you can take. One is a RAG model, retrieval augmented generation. That is a mechanism for infusing more of your enterprise data into the LLM so you get back answers that are a bit more focused on what you're doing. And the other thing you could do is fine tune a model. For example, you can use agentic systems to do that. And an agent is really just a little semi autonomous application. It's like a little mini app that has things accessible to it, like through MCP, Model Context Protocol. It can call arbitrary functions. It can decide to do something, to leverage some technology, and it uses the LLMs to get instructions on things. It just hits the LLM, hey, how do I connect an API to Google's interface, for example? It will give you instructions on that. Claude from Anthropic is proving to be very, very good at code development, at expediting code development. So much so, and we'll pick this up on the next segment here, so much so that I would say we have hit a very, very strange and interesting inflection point where it's now the business that's the bottleneck for innovation. For years, for the last 20, 30 years, it's been the developers. Do you have developers who know how to hack code well enough to innovate and change your business? Now, that can be done in a matter of days, if not minutes, as opposed to weeks and months, which is huge. Now it's up to the business to catch up. But we'll be right back, folks. You're listening to DM Radio. All right, folks, back here on DM Radio with Jim Harris. He is a author and writer, and well, of course, that's the same thing. But he writes whole books, folks. That's what I'm talking about here. Whole entire books, like start to finish. And he doesn't even use Gen AI to do it for him. That's a thing that's happening too, for sure. But we're going to be at CES. We'll be in the North Hall. We have a broadcast platform. So if you're going to CES and you're like, hey, man, I want to get me some coverage, we'll be broadcasting on KSHP in Las Vegas. That's 107.1, if my memory serves me correctly. And then all around the country on our broadcast radio network. So reach out, info@dmradio.biz. But, some of the big companies going this year, of course, NVIDIA. I mean, NVIDIA is at the epicenter of this revolution, and they do all kinds of stuff with AI. They have a software stack, including NVIDIA AI Enterprise and foundation models like Cosmos that help enterprises build, simulate, and train AI systems for autonomous robots. I'll tell you a funny story. I guess it's the current CEO of Ford Motor Company. It was interesting because the news story was just recently, but the trip he took to China was like a year ago. And basically, he said it was the most humbling experience of his life. And he said, if we do not get our act together in terms of leveraging robotics and these automated systems, we're going to get our butts handed to us by overseas manufacturers because China has really focused on using robots to automate the whole process to build cheap cars that are very inexpensive, electric cars. It's just revolutionizing how travel takes place around the world. And we're way behind, Jim. I think it was a bit of a wake-up call for this guy, but you know what I'm talking about?
Exactly. And when you actually look at a gas car, they're called ICE, internal combustion engine
Right,
vehicle,
right.
versus an EV. There's 90% fewer moving parts in an EV. So
Mm,
think about this, 90% fewer parts to break down, to
mm,
have to repair, to produce in the first place.
right.
So it's an elegant simplification of the manufacturing process. So
Mm-hmm.
yes, huge differences. I think he was looking, there's what's called wire harnessing. Um, you have to have power going to the lights in
Mm,
the front of your car, the turn signals, the headlights, the same with the back. So you have all this wiring running all over the car. And there's miles less wiring in an EV than in a traditional vehicle, which means the weight is less.
that's
The vehicle
interesting.
doesn't weigh as much. You don't have to have as much raw material in it. It's easier to diagnose problems. The ancillary or the knock-on benefits are huge.
Mm,
So he had this epiphany when he saw these vehicles and said, we're not going to be able to compete. The only way you can compete is by having like a tariff regime. And in essence, what a tariff regime does by putting taxes on foreign vehicles, it says your industry can remain lazy and not innovate.
yeah, that's this is a very interesting point, and you're right that tariffs are about the only thing you could do apart from really digging deep and focusing on innovation. But that's a difficult thing to do. I mean, in car manufacturing in particular, you think about how much effort goes into designing the car, manufacturing the car, working with all of your suppliers to get the parts that you need to do the manufacturing that needs to get done. It's a very, very complex process, and that's why tremendous amounts of work go into every design cycle when you're trying to plan for the future. And so here in the States, we had some mandates that came out, and there were also some big incentives for people to buy electric vehicles. You know, you start pulling those incentives, guess what happens? The purchases go down. You get fewer purchases. So there are lots of different factors. I had not thought about what you just mentioned, which is an interesting aspect for sure, that there are fewer moving parts. It's like a solid state drive versus a spinning disk. They can both break, but the solid state's probably not going to break nearly as fast as the spinning disk. And so here again, another development. And of course, all these GPUs, everyone's talking about GPUs. I've heard that there is now a back order on GPUs going into 2027. And this is despite NVIDIA cranking away, ARM cranking away. All these guys are just banging away at these GPUs, and even still, they can't manufacture enough of them fast enough. Now, there's also questions about overbuilding. And so one of the guys I follow on LinkedIn, Stephen Klein, I believe his name is, he's very negative on OpenAI and their business practices and things. And he's saying that, look, all this capacity they've already built for GPU workloads is only like 35% in use, which means it's 65% idle. So, is there an AI
So,
bubble?
so everybody will have a different opinion, but I like to look at recent history. And as we've already talked about on the show, ChatGPT was really text-based queries, so very
Mm-hmm.
simple things.
Mm-hmm.
We are getting more complex prompts, of course, and doing more complex work. But when you move to video, it is far more intensive, right? and the applications increase exponentially. So
Hmm.
what's happening is we're finding new use cases for AI. The majority of people still fear AI, so they haven't adopted it
Mm.
in their workspace. So training hasn't really kicked in. This is really only a 3-year revolution. AI has been around for, I began writing and speaking about it in the 90s,
Right.
but it was very expensive and inaccessible, and it really only researchers or deep-pocketed companies like IBM could play in it. But
Yeah.
now it's democratized, and I don't think we're in a bubble.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I think that what's going to happen is the capacity will be used one way or another. And I think we're at the beginning of this change in how you do business. But here's the thing. If you are one of the innovators, if you are, as we mentioned earlier, focused on a specific task, a specific workflow, whatever it may be, customer segmentation, manufacturing efficiency, for example, as long as you stay focused on trying to build out what your business needs, you're going to kill it. I mean, if nothing else, through the productivity you get from these tools. Because now, here's one of the coolest things I think that there is. And this is why generalists, I think, will do very well in this new world, because a generalist can kind of pivot and focus on different things. You can now upskill yourself, up educate yourself, if you will, in like an hour on almost any topic that's been widely published about anything: electrical engineering, manufacturing, science, research and discovery, whatever. Like there's so much information at your fingertips. You don't need to go buy books. You don't need to go to the library. You just need to sit there in front of your computer and ask questions and read the answers, and that's it.
So I believe that these tools are the most powerful learning tools in human history, and are ushering in an era of human learning that's unprecedented. So I can use AI to figure out how to use AI. I call
Right.
this very meta
That's
learning.
funny.
But
That's
I
funny.
know a CEO whose son is at university, and he'll order all his lectures. So he's taking real-time transcription. And then if there's something he doesn't understand, he snips that piece out of the transcript and pastes it into ChatGPT and says, "Explain this to me as though I'm 7 years old."
Hmm.
And he learns the base concepts. Now explain it to me like I'm 15, now 21. So you can use these tools to learn. You can use these tools to learn how to use these tools. So we're in a brand new era. I can pay $5,000 to go to a community college and learn Python, the most widely used programming language. Or I can go to ChatGPT and say, what is the first thing I need to do to learn Python? And I get it, I do it, I learn it. Okay, what's the second thing? And it's on demand at the learner's pace at 2 in the morning if I want to,
Right.
and for free, not $5,000 at a community college. So we're entering an era that is unprecedented in human history.
Yeah. I mean, that was the last swipe there at the reality on the ground, which is that higher education organizations are really going to have to bone up and figure out what they're going to do to leverage all this. And I think the short answer is to get real specific, like we were saying, and focus on trades, focus on specific jobs, and focus on preparing people for the real world. So use the technologies, prepare yourself for this new AI enabled world. Well, folks, you can find us in Las Vegas, January 5th through the 9th in the North Hall in the broadcast tower. Send me an email, info@dmradio.biz, and look Jim Harris up online. We'll talk to you next time. You've been listening to DM Radio.